Do they have the firepower immediately to respond to threats from New York to California real time? That's what I'd be worried about.
I have to tell you, I wonder if anyone is running the nerve center. I mean, you say who is. I want to know if someone is. Sorry, Josh, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say I agree with most of what Phil said. The thing I would say when it comes to trying to stop threats is you can't stop every threat, but if the President of the United States held an Oval Office address and called on these people to back down, if he made the decision to actually attend the inauguration, thereby conferring legitimacy on this election, I think that would go a long way into lessening some of the danger that we are going to see. You can't stop it all, but again, he has a role here to play, and he has not played that role, which is actually making law enforcement's job that much harder.
Oh, please. Axios is reporting overnight that he was telling Kevin McCarthy that Antifa was behind the insurrection and behind the violence. So he's doing the opposite of that. There's no news conference from the president where he's going to tell, I don't think there is, where he's going to tell people to go home. He's not going to the inauguration. Josh, I want to know where Christopher Wray is, why we're not hearing from the FBI every day right now.
Yeah, it's inexplicable, and that is this growing criticism, this lack of response from federal law enforcement speaking out publicly. And I mean, I've been one of the most vocal critics of these political hacks who have tried to malign that agency over the years, but I think it's hard to counter this type of criticism, because if you look at how the FBI and the Justice Department handle any type of attack, in the past, they come out, they hold a press conference for two reasons. First, to explain what the hell just happened, but secondly, to help calm the fears of the public, to talk about what potential threat might be out there. We haven't seen that in this case. What we've seen is essentially management by press releases and tweets. And the problem is this fuels this narrative that right-wing violence is handled differently than left-wing violence, because had this been Antifa storming the Capitol or ISIS, you can bet that law enforcement would be tripping over themselves to get to the microphone to try to reassure the public about what just happened. We're not seeing that here. And I'll just say it's not just the FBI, it's also the Department of Homeland Security. You go back and look last year, whenever the far left extremists were attacking that federal building in downtown Portland, Oregon, you had the acting head of DHS fly out there for this kind of weird photo op where he's standing there next to all these tactical agents, with his aviator glasses, projecting the image that the department will not stand for violence. We're not seeing any of that. We're seeing press releases, we're seeing tweets.
Phil, I just want to dive into that. Chad Wolf, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, abruptly resigned last night. He had promised to stay through or I guess announced that he was going to be staying through the Biden transition. And then last night, he couldn't wait 9 more days. And so without him at the helm, as you've pointed out, without the chief of the Capitol Police, who also resigned in the wake of the insurrection, with the head of the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, the House Sergeant-at-Arms, I'm a little concerned about the on-the-job learning that people who are now filling in for them are going to have to do over the next 9 days.
I would be concerned if I were you too. By the way, if we want to get to it, I agree with what Director Wray is doing. I can explain in a moment, but I think he's right to stay silent for the moment. But to your question about on-the-job training, my concern wouldn't be how you, for example, deploy National Guard forces, how you look at sheriffs and police departments across the United States. They practice this kind of stuff all the time. My concern would be other things. Number one, where's the unified flow of information and intelligence going out from a central node in Washington, D.C.? And the most significant that I've been worried about, starting with yesterday, the day before, when I saw the inexplicable move that Chad Wolf took, especially if you look at for his explanation why. It was ridiculous. But my point is, if there's a weird event, if there's an event where you see a hostage situation, where you see people with multiple weapons going into a state capitol, that's where you really need experience. You need seniority. You need someone in the chair to say, okay, guys, this is what you're doing. The day-to-day people can do the day-to-day. When you get outside that day-to-day, that's when I want to see some senior leadership.
And Phil, quickly, tell us the counterpoint of why you think that Chris Wray at the FBI is doing the right thing by staying silent.
Well, he should speak soon, but the two reasons why. Number one, if he were on this podium right now, people would be asking about the Capitol. That's not his responsibility. He's not responsible for the Capitol Police, and he's looking forward to January 20th, not back. Number two, if you're going to speak about January 20th, I'd get a little bit closer. People are already wound up. Get closer where the intelligence clarifies and you can have a message that's clear. It's too early, I think.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you both very much. We really appreciate your expertise in all of these matters. So as these threats grow, President Trump has, of course, failed to lead or speak out. Maybe that should have been written stronger. Our next guest says the president was pleased watching his extremist supporters fight for him and destroy the U.S. Capitol. Joining us now is CNN political analyst Maggie Haberman. She's a White House correspondent at the New York Times. Maggie, I just have to ask you about that reporting that you have focused on. The lawmakers were calling President Trump's cell phone for help, begging for him to send backup or do something to save their lives while they were cowering and these domestic terrorists were marauding through the U.S. Capitol, and he was too busy watching TV to do anything.
So I have slightly different reporting, Allison, that we reported last week, which is it's not that he was too busy because he was so consumed, which he was. He was engaging with aides as this was all going on. They were interrupting, telling him that he had to do something. They were interrupting, telling him that the Capitol was being overrun by his supporters. He was well aware of it. He was watching it. He was pleased because it was people fighting on his behalf. He was pleased because he liked the scene, and he was pleased because it was delaying the certification of the Electoral College vote. And those are the reasons why this happened. It wasn't just that a TV was put in front of him and you couldn't get his attention, which is a very different thing. He knew what was happening. He was back and forth from the small dining room where he watches television off the Oval Office to the Resolute desk. He just didn't want to do anything.
Did he understand that they could have been killed? Did he understand that they brought in those, wrist ties and that people could have been killed?
Look, I think most of us didn't actually know that in real time, but whether he knew that, he was hearing from people who were trapped in there, who could see what was going on. The images that most of the world got have been worse and worse, one after the other, and they have come out since the day of the riot. What lawmakers were seeing as they were cowering and running was much more explicit than